Kainé's dream daily life. In the distance, Kainé heard the steady sound of an axe striking wood. The noise had a purposeful quality to it, as if she was hearing a master woodsman go about his work. The firewood being produced, however, was as far from a work of art as could be. Pieces of every shape and size were being flung about a barren yard with wild abandon. Anyone trying to stack such wood would probably die of frustration before the job was through. So it wasn't a good work, huh? Stupid piece of shit axe. That's her grandma, huh? Kainé's grandmother flailed away with the axe, filling the air with both splinters of wood and words that could make the most hardened sailor blush. "Grandma," called Kainé. "That's you, Kainé?" yelled the old woman, taking her eyes off the wood for a moment. "Don't get too close or I might take your goddamn foot off by mistake." She brought an axe down on a piece of wood, sending chips flying in every direction. One spun past Kainé close enough for her to hear the whistle, at which point she decided to step back. Once she'd scuttled to a safe distance, she cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, "Grandma, do you need help? I can get you water or lunch or a new axe or something." The axe, poised to strike another wobbly blow, paused in mid-air. The old woman considered her granddaughter's offer for a moment, then smiled. "Tell you what, since I'm doing such a piss-poor job of chopping, why don't you come here and take over so I can go get the water? Shades have been restless lately, so I don't want you to running into one of them bastards." Okay, how old is Kainé right now? Relinquished the axe, her grandmother picked up a long pole with wooden buckets on either ends. Gathering water was by far the more difficult of the two jobs, but Kainé knew better than to complain. Once Grandma's mind was set, there was no changing it. Kainé did her best to help with chores, but Grandma took every task that required travel to the village. Although she had a long list of plausible excuses, Kainé knew the real reason. She didn't want her granddaughter to be taunted and harassed by the villagers. Oh, so they're living outside the village? I mean, which makes sense. I'm not sure this is the place where Kainé lives, where we first met her. Once Kainé moved in, Grandma decided to take up residence a good distance from the area. Out of sight, out of mind seems to be the best policy when it came to the villagers and her granddaughter, and rare were the days when any but the two of them could be found on a rocky acre of land they called home. Kainé enjoyed the solitude, but harbored a secret resentment of her grandmother's, was forced to spend her golden years in such a place. After watching her grandmother leave, Kainé turned her attention to the task at hand. She had never chopped wood before in her life, and soon discovered why the old woman hated the chore. Swing after swing of the axe produced only a tiny crack in the wood, and when she finally managed to connect with a solid stroke, the tool embedded itself in a lock and refused to budge. Frustrated, Kainé swung the axe around her head and threw it, lock and all, across the yard. Damn it! Damn it! Oh, crap! You suddenly understand the joy of her grandmother felt in a good curse. Okay, I guess that's the beginning of the Kainé we know. Happier now, she picked up the axe, throws it from the wood, and resumed chopping. She had a natural skill with a blade, but the task was challenging, and blisters soon began to form on her small pink hands. Okay, so she's still small, I guess. This is tough, and my logs are all weird sizes. I'm spitting on her palm and ignoring the pain. Kainé redoubled her efforts. Just as she was developing a rhythm, Grandma returned from the village. Setting down her buckets with a small sigh, she took one look at the log and coughed out a wheezing laugh. Pretty clumsy, girl. You better practice if you... Her grandmother suddenly collapsed to her knees, causing one of the buckets to wobble precariously. Okay, that's a bad turn of event, I guess. Eyes wide, Kainé dropped the axe and ran to her grandmother's side. Grandma. The old woman shook her head and pointed a trembling finger at the bucket. Get the bucket. Can't let it spill. Kainé steadied the bucket with a foot as she kneeled by her grandmother. A small bit of water sloshed over the side and made a new home in the hem of her dress, but Kainé didn't notice. Grandma, what's happening? Crazed with panic, she grabbed her grandmother by the shoulder and shook. After a moment, the woman lifted her arms and bat Kainé away. Stop that, just stop, she cried, breathing heavily. It ends like I'm dying. Just try from the trip is all. Kainé desperately wanted to believe her, but one look at the old woman's shaking hands and warm face told her more than words ever could. Her grandmother had lived a long, hard life, and it seems the bill was finally coming due. Okay. The time when her grandmother watched over Kainé was ending. Sooner than either of them had feared, the positions would be reversed. The next morning, Kainé came to the side of her grandmother's bed and took her wrinkled hand. Grandma, you're sick and you need medicine. I'm going to the village. The old woman shook her hand and tried to rise, but Kainé gently pushed her down. It's all right, she said. I'll be fine. Her grandmother fixed her with a gaze that could melt steel. After what seems an eternity, she finally lowered her eyes and sighed. Well, I don't like it, god damn it. But I guess I should quit being so stubborn and let you grow up. The old woman watched as Kainé strapped on her boots and made her way down the road to the village. Hours later, as an unseen sun made its way across a dark, rainy sky, she was still watching. Kainé moved at a brisk pace, checking her pockets every few minutes to make sure the money her grandmother gave her was still there. Every noise caused her to spin on her heels, making sure she wasn't being stalked by a shade, or worse, Dino and his gang. But she encountered neither tormentors nor shade, and Kainé finally found herself at the entrance to the village. The few adults she could see glanced sideways at her, then muttered to each other behind raised hands before slinking away into the shadows. Her heart racing, Kainé took a series of rapid, shallow breaths and tried to calm herself. I have to prove myself. I have to help Grandma. I have to be strong. She chanted those words to herself over and over as she slowly made her way. Finally, her eyes settled on a rotund older woman who was angrily waving her arms in the air and telling everyone who would listen exactly what she thought of Kainé's presence. Hey, lady, said Kainé with a bravado she did not feel. Where's the apothecary? The woman's flabby cheeks shook in bewildered anger. How dare this thing speak to me? They seemed to say, but Kainé saw that her eyes held a different emotion, fear. Yeah, we are both scared, lady. Trust me on this one. Which way? Kainé repeated. The woman pointed a small building to her right before hitching up her dress and stumbling off in the other direction. Kainé cringed, expecting a stone to come flying from her assembled crowd, but none came. Okay, this whole passage is longer than expected. And let's see how long this session will take. I'm actually not sure. But yeah, let's continue. Her mind was filled with a strange sense of pride as she made her way to the apothecary, but the new emotion had little time to take root, for as soon as she opened the door, she noticed a familiar customer at the counter. It was Dino. He'd clearly been sent here on some kind of family errand, because his gang of followers were nowhere to be found. Oh my... He sputtered. What are you doing here, freak? The insult was delivered without force, and Kainé happily ignored it. Stretching on tiptoes to see over the counter, she asked the shopkeeper for the medication. Ha, barked Dino. That old bitch finally leaned over. Go to hell, Dino. The boy's eyes grew so wide they seemed ready to fall out of his head, but before he could let fly a comeback, or worse, a punch, the apothecary told them to knock it off before he kicked them out of the store. Dino slunk out of the shop, cursing Kainé under his breath. Once he was gone, she allowed herself to breathe once more, taking a brief tour to the shop while the owner prepared her medication. Countless tiny bottles filled the cramped store, each with a label written in some indecipherable language. An ocean of aromas assaulted her nose, creating a sense that was exotic but not altogether unpleasant. Seeing such a variety of supplies gave Kainé a sense of peace. Surely, in a world of vast, there would be a place that she could call home. On the far wall, behind the counter, resting a portrait of a stunning young girl. The picture had once contained bright, vibrant colors, but time had worked its cruel magic and they were beginning to fade. The beauty of the work, however, remained undiminished. You like the picture? Kainé turned to find the apothecary with a small vial of medicine in his hand. His eyes were gentle but sad, and they seemed to stare through her and into nothing as he spoke. That's my daughter. I sketched it when she was just a little girl. She's been dead a long time now. Oh, sorry for that. Kainé didn't know how to respond. She just stared at the portrait and tried to come up with the right words. Pictures are wonderful things, continued the shopkeeper. They let the ones closest to live with on forever. He shook his hand slightly, then looked down at Kainé and smiled. Handing her the medicine, he reached into his sizable green apron and produced a handful of old wax crayons. You should have these. There's no one left that I wish to draw. Kainé took an instinctive step back, causing the shopkeeper's face to darken. Yes, I've heard the rumors about you, he said. It's a small village and word travels quickly. Between you and me, I'm not sure which of them to believe, but I also don't think they matter much. I know your grandmother, Kelly. Oh, her name is Kelly. Okay, now I know it. Kelly. And I think the way she was driven out of this town was just deplorable. Grandma's name is Kelly? Thought Kainé suddenly. Oh, you didn't know that? Oh. Yeah, but... I mean... You just call her grandma, I guess that's fine. She was still mulling the new fact over in her mind as she reached out and gently took the crayons from the apothecary's hands. Your grandmother is an old friend of mine, he said as Kainé scooted away yet again, and I own her much. Ah, cool. Who are you? I wager she would like it if you drew a picture of her. Yes, I think she would like that very much. Kainé murmured a quiet agreement, but inside her heart was busting. Never before had a villager treat her with anything but complete contempt. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible step, but it was a step nonetheless. And with enough tiny steps, she might one day discover the rest of the world. I guess it's a little bit of hope. That's a nice twist. When Kainé returned home, she found her grandmother asleep in her bed. Her feet were blackened and raw, even bleeding a bit in places, leading Kainé to think that she had been pacing around the room until exhaustion finally caught up with her. Yeah, so she was just worried. Understandable. She placed the medicine at her grandmother's pillow and turned to leave, but found the old woman's hand collapse around her arm. Back already, are you? Asked the grandmother with a yawn. Come here, let me have a look at you. Grandma sat up and examined Kainé from head to toe. Finally satisfied that nothing terrible had befallen her grandchild, she leaned back and allowed herself to relax. Well, how was it? Those buzzards giving you any trouble? It was kind of fun, said Kainé with a small smile. No, seriously, it was. Fun, huh? Asked her grandmother in a voice which implied she believed anything but... So anytime you need me to run an errand, let me just know. Just let me know. As she spoke, Kainé removed the crayons from her pockets. After a brief explanation of her source, she informed her grandmother that she was going to sketch her portrait. A portrait of me? Ridiculous. No one wants to stare at the wrinkled old crone. But grandma, it will make you live forever. Horseshit, said her grandmother, throwing back the sheet from her bed. Living forever would just piss me off. Now put those crayons away and help me with dinner. Ah, a temperate woman, huh? But Kainé would not relent, and in the end, Grandma found herself leaning against the wall of their houses, as if posing for a master artist. Kainé took up the crayons, eyed her subject carefully, and set to work. Just as her grandmother was about to nod off, Kainé finished the piece. After staring at it for a bit, she released it from her grip and let it slowly drift to the floor. It's terrible. It doesn't look like you at all. I mean, not everyone is an artist. I'm sorry, Grandma. I thought these crayons would, make drawing easier or something. The old woman's eyes narrowed at her granddaughter's disappointment. "Let me be the judge of that," she said, ignoring the pain in her back and reaching for the paper. The sketch could have been a person's face. It also could have been a boulder, a lump of clay, or an incredibly misshapen loaf of bread, all rendered in a chaotic array of colors. The old woman stared at the picture for a long time, then slowly wheezed out a laugh. "Oh, Kainé," she said between laughter, "you truly are my blood. You're as clumsy as me, and I love it. But push. I won't hear any more bull about how ugly you think it is. It came from the heart, and I will treasure it anyways." True to her words, the old woman gave the picture a place of honor above the kitchen table. Damn, that's a very long story, man. In the days that followed, Kainé would often catch her staring at the portrait with a strange smile on her face, an action she interpreted as silent, mocking laughter. A week later, Kainé could stand it no more and asked her grandmother to take the artwork down. "Posh," said the old woman. "I will take this down when they roll me in my shroud." She pondered this for a bit, then turned to Kainé and dropped to one knee. "Listen to me, girl. Seeing this picture makes me happy in a way I've never felt before." "Oh, that's nice. And it makes me want to go on so that someday you can feel the same happiness." It was a moment that burned itself in Kainé's memory, a perfect blend of pride and love and joy that came together to form a lifelong remembrance. She swore to never forget this moment, to never forget the old woman who had made her place in the world possible. Time moves on, people and memories move in and out like ghosts passing through a hall, but this moment will be different, Kainé swore, because I will remember it forever. Forever.